Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world and connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.
Good day and welcome back to Around the Bead podcast. Today is episode 1 of an infinite series on agriculture. Today we have Mike Welsh, Strategic Account Manager for East Bay Tire in the studio, head of original equipment and equipment dealer business. Mike, welcome to the podcast. Are you ready to kick the tires?
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you for having me.
So, Mike, that was a mouthful of a role there. What do you actually do when it comes to tires and wheels?
Well, approaching the original equipment manufacturers, and when we onboard new customers, we go after the wheels and tires and ensure that we can deliver on time, and we've got great product and good pricing.
So this is what many would call OE2, which is not the John Deere's, the Case, the New Holland of the world.
Correct.
But it is a lot of that support equipment, the tires and wheels for harvesting equipment, for tillage, for spraying. Is that the core of what you're focused on?
That's correct. Typically out here on the West Coast, there's so many different crops. So there's different types of manufacturing companies that build equipment to harvest different types of crops.
And we talk about this pretty regularly. You drive the Midwest, you're going to see a lot of the same functions for corn and soybeans, but the variety in the West Coast, just making a list quickly last night, from vineyard type to row crop, the produce of the central or of the Salinas Valley in the Yuma Valley, all of the tree fruits and nuts. They require different equipment for different applications. Even the difference between Chico, California and Bakersfield, California in soil types is dramatic.
Absolutely.
Do you see requests from equipment dealers and original equipment manufacturers to answer those questions with tires?
Yeah, it's important, depending on the soil, that you have it has a lot to do with the atmosphere. I mean, the rain that we get constantly, Pacific Northwest is even different than, Bakersfield.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, before we get into sprayers and soil compaction and all those details, give us a little bit of history. What were you doing before you were in this role?
Well, I grew up in the wheel business. So I built wheels years and years ago, and basically the tires.
You built wheels.
I built wheels with my own hands.
How do you build a wheel?
Well,
help me out here.
Well, basically, you've got to manufacture the center plate. That's the important thing, and then making sure that you get it in the right position for the right equipment.
Yeah.
I'll go back to a little story that I did back when I was just starting, is that we had some monster truck guys come into the facility that I was working at and said, "Hey, I need some wheels for this tire that I want to use." And we actually got started building wheels outside of the company by building monster truck wheels.
With today's liability, that scares me just thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing I didn't really realize until I met you is there's not really many companies in the world that make what is called the outer of the wheel.
The rim, the rim base.
The rim base. It's less than a dozen worldwide that make those for ag, but the center plate, a lot of people can do that, and welding or cutting bolt holes, the centers.
Typically done on CNC machines.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can do it by laser.
Okay.
But typically, if you're going to build a wheel, you have to use a flat plate. A lot of companies that you buy the rim base from also have the formed type plates that you can actually use.
What's a form type plate?
It's typically stamped. A lot of them are stamped. Some of them are spun.
Yeah.
But there's form to it.
Okay.
So, and there's different types of offsets you can create with those types of discs.
I often hear in the ag industry that people want flat plates versus press form plates. What is that? Why is that?
I think the mentality of that is for strength.
Okay.
As they look at that and they say, I want this wheel and I want a flat plate because I think it's going to be stronger. Typically, if you talk to engineers, that's not the case. You don't want something that's just so rigid.
Mm-hmm.
So, using a form plate and looking at the thickness of these form plates, you might have to go to a thicker disc.
So, just hearing the complications of this, you work with engineers on a regular basis?
I do, and that's typically how we strive to get more business through these original manufacturers, is that we work with the engineers and they ask a lot of questions. They, typically we have to find the right tire.
Yeah.
We have to find the tire that's going to be used in their application.
Does
Then
it-
we build the wheel behind it.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask. So an engineer, an OE comes to you, or maybe even an equipment dealer, and says, this is the tire first, and then the wheel comes second.
Correct. My mentality is that finding the right tire, air pressure, capacity, OD, width, I can build any wheel around a tire.
Okay.
So it's critical to find the right tire.
Okay. So right now, this is spring of 2025. This episode will release midsummer. What does the market look like for OE2 the last couple of years, and how are equipment dealers responding to it?
On the OE2 side, business has been down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So in the last probably 3 months, we've seen a little bit of an upturn in business.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's a good sign for the OE2s. It's going to take a few years before it gets back to its original 4 or 5 years ago.
And one thing I look back from 4 or 5 years ago is when OE2 started to take a downturn. It was probably a year after that OE1 started to make changes. So if we look at the news from the last 6 months, John Deere, Case, New Holland, I don't believe Kubota, but I have to double check that, all have posted substantially lower numbers, have made plant layoffs, have dramatically cut back on their business.
Absolutely.
So it's very encouraging for me to hear that OE2 is starting to push forward, because that could be signs of OE1 coming back around next year. And I'm forecasting a 2027 rebound in ag. We're quite a bit of ways from that. And if you're in the wine industry or other markets that are really down, it's hard to see that. But the trend would lean that way right now.
Absolutely.
So equipment dealers, the support equipment, the OE2 support equipment that you provide tires and wheels to, provide counsel on, that's a huge portion of an equipment dealer's revenue, right? They sell John Deere tractors, but they also sell
Equipment.
shakers and sprayers and everything else. Naturally, their business is going to be down if OE2 is not producing. How do you help support an equipment dealer with tires and wheels on their tractors?
Yeah, it's the equipment dealer program is difficult because it's based off the economic world, really, and so are farmers buying equipment right now? They're not. I think they're holding on to their money. So tractor sales are down quite a bit. They are selling tractors. California's had a airborne type incentive to buy tractors, as we know. That's helped it move along, but I don't know if that's continuing. But I think it's going to be, when the economy turns around, sales are probably going to pick up a little bit. But as it stands now, I'm going to say it's probably as low as it's ever been.
We'll definitely check those numbers on another podcast. I'll come back more educated.
Okay. Yeah.
But what I love hearing about what you do every day with an equipment dealer is in large part helping them sell tractors. It sounds like a crazy job when you really look at the process. A farmer comes to an equipment dealer and says, well, I want to do this with my tractor, and I want to put these tires on, or I want more traction, more footprint, less soil compaction, whatever it may be. And then the equipment dealer just throws that challenge in your lap, and you've got to figure it out, right?
Absolutely. And that's where that business comes, is that as all these tractors are made in the Midwest and other places, and they stay to the certain wheel and tire where they are going to be used in other applications, not the West Coast.
Yep.
So like you say, different flotation, different air pressure, tread, it all. So we go in and we make wheels and tires for these tractors to fit the farmer's needs.
You mentioned the Midwest, and we always talk about that, but I don't care where you are in the world, a farmer's going to want to find another way to do something better.
Absolutely. Whether he wants to run more tanks on the trailer, more weight on the trailer, or on the tractor, it happens day in and day out. We get calls.
Can you think of a moment where you got an ask that you just didn't think you'd ever be able to answer?
Yeah, it's difficult at times when you talk to these equipment dealer companies, and the toughest thing is not having all the information.
Right.
Okay, tractor, what model? What do you want to do with the tractor?
Yeah.
So you got to ask all these. You got to interview somebody.
Well, in large part, they haven't sold the equipment yet.
Correct.
Right. It's still you're supporting it in process sale.
A quote. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll share with you and the viewers one of my favorite custom tire and wheel combinations and adjustment stories. Is I've got a call from a customer. He's got a blown out tire, and he's like, man, this tire just it can't handle it. He's got to warranty it. And we go through this process like 3 times, and I've asked the question. It's a flotation tire. I think it was a 400. 55, 22.5, one of the shorter, narrower 22.5 flotation tires out there. And he sent in 3 separate tires, and I said, well, I want to come out and see this. I've asked the questions, is it overloaded? How fast are they running?
Right.
Where are they running? Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I got to see this. I want to see what the equipment is. Come on site. And it was a hay mixer at a dairy. So we go out to the dairy, and they have a scale right there. And what they have done is they have replaced 2 duals 17.5s on a standard hay mixer.
Okay.
They put a flotation tire on it, which is really common nowadays, and really has, if done right, has a lot of advantages for soil compaction, for overall wear, for running at high speeds, a bunch. We throw it on the scale right there, and they're running 10 to 12,000 pounds overweight capacity on it. It's no wonder they're blowing out. Right. But it just goes to show really how much these tires can handle, because they're out of spec for an entire year before they really start to fail.
Right.
And that's something that there's not necessarily, hey, as soon as this hits 1 pound overweight, that the tire just blows up or the wheel blows up. There's tons of components that go into that whole application succeeding.
Yep. Speed, capacity, air pressure.
Yeah.
You have to put it all into
there's a lot of components.
Yeah.
So I want to break down a little bit of the equipment today for the viewers, how you and I tend to look at it in different categories. You have really pre-harvest, right? So you're planting, tillage, then spraying, which is a huge component to West Coast business. A lot of pull behind sprayers, not a ton of self-propelled sprayers in the West. And then you've got harvest, right, which is a short time frame in which equipment generally specialized equipment is there to get the job done literally as fast as possible.
Exactly.
And then you have all-purpose tractors. For you, which one of those areas really brings the most attention to tires and wheels?
Well, it happens to be all of them. Really, is that the spraying business is really. I think we've done a good job in the spraying pull type sprayer business when we've eliminated a little bit of the I-1 tires and we've gone to the flotation type tires.
I think you're being pretty humble on that. You know, I really wanted to bring you on the show to admit this, that you've really changed the entire industry from 16-1 I-1 tires into flotation tires.
Yeah.
And I love this story because 16-1 I-1 tires have been produced in the United States for better part of 80 years at this point. But what you were seeing is those volumes were getting less and less, and there was less manufacturers making those tires. So the price of that tire kept going up incrementally. Same thing with the wheels. So that assembly was getting more expensive for not only farmers, but the OE manufacturers who are producing the equipment. And you came up with replacing those I-1 tires with common flotation tires that are used every single day in Europe, and wheels that are produced in higher production runs that come at a lower cost. And now you're seeing a lower cost, higher performing option coming to OE2 and coming to those farmers.
Yes. Yeah. And just the one problem that they were having, punctures, citrus, they were puncturing tires left and right.
Yeah.
I get a little story that a customer had told me, and we put these flotation tires on his machine. It's a pull type sprayer. And he had to get it delivered Saturday morning. We're talking Friday now, is that we delivered the wheels and tires on Friday, and he bolts them on the pull type sprayer, and he has to have the machine in Arizona Saturday morning.
Yeah. Yuma, Arizona?
It was Phoenix.
Phoenix, okay.
And so he can't find a truck to put it on, so he pulls it in the middle of the night to Phoenix, Arizona.
Which is a real life scenario. That's what you would do, right? That's what a
care of
farmer would do.
Yeah, take care of the customer, right?
Yeah.
So he gets about halfway. He says he gets out, feels the tires. They're not even a little bit warm, and it's probably 80, 90 degrees at night. And he gets to Phoenix, Arizona in the morning, and he says tires still had the little tits on the tire. And they were not warm at all. I don't think I don't think an I-1 tire would have lasted.
No,
I really don't.
I know the gentleman you're talking about. The first time you told that story, I was blown away, and I ended up running into him at the farm show, World Ag Expo in Tulare, California, many years ago. And his other bragging part of it was the fuel economy they got out of his truck. Not only that, but the bouncing of the Bias 16-1, he would have been death gripping that truck the whole way there.
Right. Yeah. We've I would have to say 80% of the customers that we do have that build pull type sprayers have gone to the flotation tire.
At least have an option for it nowadays.
And it when it all comes out in the wash, it's about the farmer.
Yeah.
If he wants to change the tires, change his fleet over.
Well, and what can't be articulated is that maybe the supply chain has changed, but the farmer isn't familiar with that, right? So I use that example is, 16-1 large implement tires are still pretty well known for those in the industry. But the inventory, there would be thousands of those tires available in tire dealers and tire distributors' inventories just in one state. Now there's less than half a dozen, right?
Right.
And flotation, true flotation, modern flotation, as we would call it, has really taken over that whole market.
Yes.
And now the supply chain is there. So when a farmer runs into a blowout, and this is what's so exciting to me about what you do, is you're influencing OE2 while also supporting the replacement market. So when you put on that flotation tire and that farmer 2 years down the road has a blowout, well, that tire's already in stock on the West Coast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? As opposed to speccing something that doesn't really exist in the replacement market, and then a farmer has equipment down for a day, 2 days, a month.
That's really true, because when you're working with engineers too, and they say, I like this tire, it's like you kind of try to steer them away for something that's not available, not readily available. So, that's one thing to keep in mind when you're speccing tires and wheels.
Yeah. So talking about speccing tires and wheels, on the show we talk a lot about total cost of ownership, cost per hour, cost per mile. I saw something the other day posted by Pacific Ag Rentals, and I don't think I shared this with you, but they posted that on average, farm equipment sits for 40% of the year. Yeah. And that's completely contrary to a lot of the stuff we talk about on this podcast, which is, okay, how do you get the most out of it? Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I have for farmers is, what matters most to you? Is it hours? Is it years? Is it traction? Is it soil compaction? Is it all of those things? But if you're not using the equipment for 40% of the year, it's hard to say, hey, I want to put on the most expensive tire that gets the most amount of hours, that gets the best soil, that has the lowest soil compaction, most traction. It's hard to have that conversation.
It is. And I think the more farmers you talk to, the more answers you're going to get.
Right.
Not everybody's going to be the same, because it's going to be a different part of the state, different soils.
Absolutely.
Different pocketbooks.
Yeah.
So
I use the example as I think that radial turf tires make a lot of sense for the nut industry out there, but at the cost point, and when a lot of that turf equipment is basically only used for maybe 30% of the year, mm-hmm. Performance-wise, it'd be great, but you can't justify the cost, at least for most farmers, unless they're harvesting companies, which is a thing I'd love to get into with you. But it's hard to justify that cost if they're only using it for 30% of the year.
Yeah, it definitely, it's all about money, when it comes down to the end.
Well, and availability of the parts, right? Yeah. So that farmer can get up and running, because downtime is certainly worth a lot to them.
Yeah, a lot of these companies carry spare parts and extra tires just for that case, because when they're harvesting, they don't stop.
Right.
They'll run on flat tires, or try to.
Sure. So let's delve right into harvesting equipment, since it's top of mind. I think I looked up what a John Deere cotton picker costs nowadays, and we're like well beyond 7 figures. Mm-hmm. Harvesting equipment has gotten dramatically expensive. Cloth choppers for silage. These are almost not realistic for farmers in lower acreages to justify that cost. Right. And it seems like it's brought this buoy of custom harvesters, companies that are focusing just on harvesting and run harvesting a lot of the year. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing any high performance trends with that, where somebody who's using harvesting equipment more than your average farmer, they have their whole business dedicated to it, are asking for high performance tires or roading tires, newer solutions now that they use them more?
Yeah, you have these manufacturers that are building equipment that actually do the harvesting. Mm-hmm. So those guys are really important to get the feedback to find out.
Oh, I see OE2 that also has a harvesting
company.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're harvesting not year round, but they do the shaking during harvest, and then there's shaking to do afterwards too, and taking the mummies off the
kind of like us with a tire company, but we also have a logistics company to test the truck tires.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So how often? So you put a tire in test. Let's use this as an example. Mm-hmm. In trucking, we can basically forecast the mileage in a month, 2 months, 3 months. We can start to get an idea. Maybe a year at most. I would think that'd be much more challenging in ag place a custom tire and wheel in OE2, and then it's got to wait till harvest in order to get tested. And then how many years worth of harvest is it you feel like we're confident to run that tire?
Yeah, we've had test tires out there in the Central Valley, and they've ran through the harvesting process with no problems, no issues. But do they really want to go through a second term? The tires are still good. Sometimes these tires will last 5 seasons.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to manage that and find the performance of them.
I would love to get some surveys from farmers and equipment dealers on how important longevity of a tire in years is to them when they're making that purchase.
Yeah, I think that's real important.
Yeah. So talking different types of tread designs, recent years we've seen the multi-purpose tread become really, really popular. I shouldn't say really popular. That's a dramatization. But certainly more popular. It feels like almost every manufacturer is making one. Alliance more or less pioneered it with the 550. Michelin makes a road bib. Now you see a variety of other manufacturers build it. And it's supposed to be a roading answer, a multi-purpose answer, a more fuel-efficient answer. Are we going to see this take off, or is it still going to be niche?
I think it's something we need to keep pushing on because of the fact that the parcels are so much smaller here in California.
Yeah.
It's a perfect tire for out here in the West.
Right.
So you're running from parcel to parcel. You sometimes have to road these machines, and it's a great tire to be roaded.
Sure.
So
you say that, and then I still don't feel like it's gained enough traction, pun intended, on the West Coast, but we see it in like the Palouse area in the Pacific Northwest, right, where there's a lot of hilly range. I think it would do great in vineyard applications, right? You tend to have steep inclines on vineyards, and we're still seeing it in the Midwest from a roading perspective. But it's almost like the West is the one that's pushing back on it.
Exactly. They haven't really come to grips to go to that type of tread. So I think it just needs to be brought to these farmers' attention. I don't know if really the tire dealers are really getting out there talking to these farmers.
I don't think there's enough education out there.
There you go.
On it. And then at the same token, OE influences so much. It's not an option from an OE perspective. You're not going to go onto the John Deere website and be able to drop down that menu. Right. Most of the OEs, I love going on the websites and seeing what they charge for tires. It's not realistic or financially smart for a farmer to go say, I'll take the premium package from any OE on whatever tires are being offered. They might as well take the cheapest option, which tends to be a Goodyear or a Firestone, and then just sell those tires and upgrade them later.
Right.
But my point is that multi-purpose tires are not available on an OE builder.
No, that's true. And a lot of that is true throughout all the different manufacturers.
Yeah.
Kubota has probably done the best job in their
100%.
Having different types of tread patterns.
Yeah, they're a lot more customizable from a building perspective, a lot more flexible. They're just a lot more open to adjusting their tractors to fit the application.
Right. And the story comes up about trying to buy these tractors on slaves, on just pieces of steel, to get them out here and then buy the wheels and tires once they get out here, depending on what kind of application it goes to.
It's something that is really common in other parts of the world. There's a lot of custom tires and wheels that get done in Europe for that purpose. Is OEs have said, okay, hey, there's so many customizations, it's not worth it for us to try and satisfy everybody.
There's no money in it.
Right?
Not for the manufacturers.
No, no, and they have to charge the premium that they charge in the OE builder because it changes the supply chain for them. It makes it less efficient, right?
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see as whether or not the United States follows Europe in that way to say, hey, we're going to allow custom and tires and wheels to be done by the aftermarket, like OE2 has already done. And we're starting to see that from equipment dealers where, okay, I want to buy John Deere 5 and 6 series. We're going to buy 100 and 100, have them shipped in, and then we're going to customize them for carrots. We're going to customize them for broccoli. We're going to customize them for the Yuma market versus this.
Salinas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, switching gears here a little bit, brands out there. I want to touch on just a little bit of everything today since it's our intro pod for ag. We've really seen Titan, Goodyear, Alliance, and BKT take up a ton of market share in ag. Titan and Goodyear certainly on the OE side, and Alliance and BKT on the replacement side. But who seems to be leaving the market in terms of ag?
Leading?
Leaving.
Oh, leaving.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Not sure I can answer that one.
Yeah.
I'm so focused in on the five that we just talked about, BKT and Alliance and Goodyear.
Well, one of the ones that always comes to mind for me is the 23-degree Firestone, right? If you look back 20 years ago, Firestone was a huge component of ag. 50 years ago, most certainly, and isn't anymore. And that 23-degree used to be a favorite tread design, a ton of traction, was the OE tire out there. And a lot of people felt like it was going to disappear based off of fuel economy. And so fuel economy is an interesting component as today California exceeds $6 a gallon in regular diesel. I have no idea what red diesel is going for. But in other parts of the country, it's dropping below $2.
Right.
So there has been a lot of changes, and we can delve into it on a whole other podcast. But if you look at the mix of brands out there, a lot has changed in ag quietly over the last 30 years.
Oh, absolutely. And you bring up Firestone. They've reduced SKUs tremendously. And so years ago, we used to run into it quite a bit.
Yeah.
People would request Firestone, but
It's a must-have.
Yeah, and nowadays it's just not. It's not there. The BKTs and the Alliances and the Galaxies have taken over.
Yeah.
And Firestones just aren't there.
It's so hard on a production side, and of course we're talking about this mid-tariffs. So a lot could absolutely change in the long term. It's not going to change overnight. It's not easy just to turn on a factory and say we're going to produce 1,000 SKUs. But we did see that from other manufacturers who really focused on ag. This is going to be our lead. This is what we're going to be focused on. This is what we're going to be specialized in. And I have a lot of respect for those manufacturers who've done that. They said this is going to be our all-encompassing mission. And there are huge changes in ag. And that's not pointing any fingers. That's very challenging for Big Corp to do when they have to report to shareholders every single quarter,
right,
to stay dedicated to an industry that goes like this.
Yeah. There's no consistency.
No, there's no consistency. So,
and historically, it's been the same way for 50, 60 years, right?
Absolutely. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
So let's pivot a little bit to AI, zero emission tractors, and driverless. Monarch Tractor is one of the tractor makers out there. They're actually assembled in California on the West Coast. They've got the electric tractor. Do we think that we're going to see any changes in engines based off of where diesel prices are right now?
It has to do with the overall economy, and I don't see electric tractors making a big push quickly.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long-term situation.
Right.
So, yeah, will it happen? Yes, eventually.
You say the overall economy. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I would say a lot of it has to do with compliance and where the government sits on it.
The restrictions through California. I think California is going to be leading that.
Yeah.
Will there ever be electric 9R John Deere running soybean and corn? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll know if any of the major manufacturers come out with a zero emission option. They've all been pretty quiet on it from a social media perspective. I try and follow and keep up with it.
Right.
I don't hear whispers of a hydrogen engine, an electric engine, and John Deere. A lot of these guys are making investments into these smaller upcoming companies to make sure that they're ahead of it. But without some serious regulation, it's hard to imagine with or without $6 diesel.
Right. Yeah. It's very expensive.
Now, driverless and AI, with the current concerns of labor shortages out there, that's certainly something that everybody's pushing. John Deere announced it in the last couple of years as far as them putting together automated tractors. Gus Automation, based out of the Central Valley, has driverless sprayers. Where do you see this going?
Well, I see it surpassing the zero emissions. You're going to see the autonomous stuff more and more all the time.
Yeah.
And it's coming now. We deal with a lot of customers that have these machines.
Yeah. I'd love to see the numbers on it, on how fast that is progressing. And which farmers are actually using them. Are they bigger farms? Are they smaller farms? Is there anybody out there that's doing calculations on, okay, this is what we think our long-term savings can be on it? And how the equipment still has to be built well, driverless or not.
Right.
If you're going to spend that much money and you're going to reduce your head count and try and make some cost savings there, that equipment has to last. And
it has to last, yeah. And the other thing too is the ability to minimize your chemicals. They're spraying. They have cameras on them. They go off and on at times when
the
they
efficiencies
need to.
of
The
the
efficiency,
equipment.
yeah. So, and that's probably their biggest expense on it when it comes to farming.
Is the spraying?
Spraying.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
I would have to think so. Yeah.
I would love to look at that. Okay. All right. So crop markets. We're getting close to our time here. Do we see any changes in the crop markets this year? I mean, as you talk to OE2, does nuts seem like they're going to come up? I think last I checked, almonds were sitting a little above 2. Nothing dramatic.
They've come up a little bit from where they were, but it's nothing substantial.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think it's status quo for the year. Might be some fluctuations, but next year is really going to be a telling year. If it's a challenging year, I think people are going to have to pull acreage.
Yes. I think people are just holding on and trying to make it.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, Mike. Well, I loved having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
For our listeners out there and those that are viewing, if you've got ag questions, if you have certain topics that you want to hear from us, put them in the comments, and we will tackle them one episode at a time. For now, let's air this one up.
Thank you.
Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world and connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.